Hi, so I am Nikki, a coach for co-founders, and I work with co-founder teams to unite them on vision and mission to build a successful partnership. And I also work with co-founders in a one-to-one capacity to support those entering or exiting a partnership. And that is off the back of my own experience as a co-founder of a branding agency, Lumen Lion. I'm fortunate to say I've got a very strong partnership with my co-founder, but I've definitely ridden the roller coaster of that experience. So I'm keen and I'm really passionate about championing the reality and challenges and amazes being a co-founder, but sharing all that as I go. So that's me.
Thanks, Nikki. Well, yes, my name's Amber and I'm a startup associate at Vested. I help early stage founders protect their startup's equity, build agreements to incentivize their team, and get ready to raise investment through SEIS.
Fantastic. And it's great to be here again together today, like we were last week.
Yeah, it was a great session we had last week.
It was, wasn't it? It was really good. So just to share a brief overview of our session today. So we'll be covering why you need a tight partnership before you build out a team. Amber will then talk us through the ownership effect and how it can boost your team's culture. And I will then wrap up with how your partnership impacts the team around you.
And just for an overview of the series in general, this is session 2 of our 3-part webinar series, the Co-Founder Files. So in this series, we're covering all things co-founder relationships, integrating equity into your strategy, and getting ready for a fundraising round with your co-founder and early team. Last week, we spoke about the importance of testing the co-founder relationship and preparing co-founder prenups. So if you missed it, feel free to drop me a DM and I can send you through our special resources that we prepared for that. And next Monday will be our third and final session for now. And we'll be talking about setting yourself up for success with investors. So keep an eye out for details coming on that. But for now, Over to you, Nikki.
Looking forward to the next one as well. So yes, starting with why you need a tight partnership before you build a team. And I think for me, this comes down to the idea that before you think about building a team, you need to check or make sure that your partnership is solid, right? You are the foundation of this business. How can you build a strong team if there's cracks in that foundation? And by cracks, I might mean misalignment in mission or vision, or even working styles and routines. Loads of ways we can feel misaligned with our partners. But I see time and time again that co-founders don't take the time to explore this thoroughly before building a team. And for me, it just makes sense, right? If you're building a house, you need strong foundation. If you're building a car, you need a strong engine. All the things that kind of hold and keep that business moving rely on your partnership fundamentally. So there's so much work to do before you can build a team. And from my experience, I feel like the reason why this work isn't done is obviously unique in every circumstance, but tends to sit across a few themes, which I find are things like people find it easier to ignore or dismiss conversations that are about themselves or their dynamic. They instead want to focus on the economy, the business, the product. Whereas this is perhaps in some ways the harder work because it requires reflection, vulnerability potentially, sharing weaknesses, sharing feedback, the harder work. I also think it's perhaps down to sometimes just ignorance is bliss. I don't mean that in a rude way, but as in people just don't realize or choose to perhaps ignore any cracks that they might see, or the idea that people just think, well, we're fine, we're a good team, we get by day to day. But actually there's always work you can do to make sure that you're strong and tight to build the best team that you can.
I think this goes back to what we were talking about last week in the, when you say about building the car or building the house, and failing to prepare is preparing to fail, and that does echo back to the co-founder relationship, right?
Absolutely. And I think there's also a definitely with startups, and it's a message I'm keen to champion, because obviously if you're doing this for the first time, you don't know how it feels to build a team or what you need to ask or to do. But I think there is also a naivety, which we'll come on to in more detail later, but to the extent of which your partnership impacts the team around you in every single way. But I think it's perhaps also, to add to my list of reasons there, it's also that I just think a lot of startup co-founders just don't know the impact that it can have, or there's so much else on their mind that they, as I said, this is kind of slips down the list, but it really does make a huge difference, as we'll go on to explore, into the team you attract and the long-term success of that team. And on that note, an exercise I really like to run here with my clients is a vision alignment sprint, which is a resource that we'll be sending out today to those that engage with the event. But I use it in a few different ways, and I run it with clients who are sort of notably unaware that they're out of sync or experiencing tension. But I also run it with clients before they recruit or expand, as it makes sure that you're fully resetting and realigning on your focus. Because I find that a lot of businesses, when we start up, right, and it's exciting and we've got a clear vision and a clear mission, that all seems really strong and aligned. But business moves on, life happens, factors influence that vision and your lifestyles around it, and it needs to be consistently revisited and tightened to make sure you're on the same page. So as I said, this exercise will be in a resource that I'll send out, but to share the steps of the exercise, firstly, what's really important is to think about your individual selfish visions. And I use the word selfish intentionally because I feel like with co-founders that there can be this almost martyrdom like vibe where people think, oh well, I didn't want to say that because I didn't want them to feel bad. It's all about the business. I put my partner first, etc., which isn't a long-term sustainable view. For the business to last and the partnership to last, you have to make sure that what you want and need in this business is voiced, so it can be discussed, collaborated on, and compromised if needed. But at least you've expressed that. So your selfish vision. Sorry, Amber.
I was just going to ask, what kind of things do you mean? Because I guess last week we were touching on, issues around awkwardness with potentially financial things or personal outside of work kind of requirements. But what kind of things are you talking about here?
Yeah, so your selfish vision is your deep personal why for building this business and being part of this team. So how it fits in with the vision for your life. And by that, I mean your lifestyle as a whole. So where you want to live, what you want to do day to day, your family lifestyle, your social lifestyle, your values, all the things that make up the vision for what you want for yourself and why the business fits into that. And how well is that currently being met? Because again, I found with my own co-founder, when we started our agency 4 years ago, we were both in very different places to where we are now. Like my co-founder has children, I currently don't. So it's like when we started the business, our selfish visions were different to what they are now. And I now feel like there's an importance to reset and realign that, because again, partners will talk about what's the business plan, but like, what's your broader life plan as a person? How does the business fit into that story? It's work that's often ignored again because it can be difficult or it can prompt deep conversation, but it's really, really important.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess, going back to the not even just preemptive planning before things get bad. It doesn't necessarily have to be these vision alignment sprints happening when there is an issue. It can be ahead to, I guess, mitigate against or reduce the chance of misalignment later down the road. No, that's brilliant.
Absolutely. And then it's about really sharing those visions and making sure that you are aligned. Well, no, let me rephrase that. Sharing the visions and making sure that you actually understand that if you are aligned on those, great. And if you're not, or there's questions around how the business fits around that, then amazing. This has given you such a rich, important discussion to have around how do you make sure that your individual goals and ambitions fit into the business so that you as a team are invested long term in that plan and in that mission in that business. So again, there's questions I've shared in the resource that help you explore that, but doing this work and making sure you're really clear on your individual visions is important in building a team, because you both, well, if there's more than two of you, you all know as co-founders where you stand and what that person's ambitions are and what you're doing fits into that bigger picture. And then once you've done that work, the third step is the business vision. So how have your selfish visions influenced the business vision now at this stage? How has the business vision evolved from when it was first conceived, and how do you feel about that? I have yet to work with a co-founder pair who have the exact same vision and plan when they started.
Obviously, as it often goes.
The core mission and reasoning, might be the same, often are, but the actual richer picture around that is often very varied. And what makes it, an adventure by running a startup. But having
the famous pivot.
Yes, exactly. And then from that work, it leads to collaborative goal setting and actions. And I find even from going through those steps, that alone gives you such rich interview material to recruit a team, right? Laid out in that, you've got really clear and rich personal insights to share as to why the business matters to you, who you are as a team. You've got a really rich and realigned business vision. What can you share about that, and what does that mean to you? And then you've got goals and actions to take away from it. So you have amazing things to bring into an interview there, and to help build a team. So you actually share and make sure that they're aligned on that. Not to mention the clarity and confidence that you get as partners in your direction and why you're the team to make this come to life. So I think it's really important work to be done up front, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Making sure that you're both on the same page, aligned, and again, ahead of attracting the right people in line with your vision for your business.
And I read in your resource, Amber, I'm going to nick this stat from you, that 23% of startups fail because they haven't got the right team, which I thought was a really amazing stat that you'd included there. And I think that actually from doing this work and what you get from that, you are more likely to attract the right people. Yeah, because you know who you want, why you want them. You're really clear on all those parts that make the business and you as a team tick, which not only then means you're getting the right people into the business, but it makes it more efficient, right? You know who you want and also who you don't want. And the more of those right people that you get, the stronger that sense of unity towards your mission is. Kind of that foundation of the building on top of it are really tight because you're all on that same page. So
absolutely,
I've definitely seen amazing outputs come from doing this work and the impact on having a team. Definitely.
Yeah, and that 23% figure for the startups that fail due to not having the right team. I mean, there are so many reasons why these things happen, right? As we know, as we spoke about with co-founder conflicts, can be a big one as well. But they say you need 3 things for a successful startup. On a very, very high level overview here, but yeah, the dream, the scheme, and the team. So
love it.
that team being a big determinant in the startup's recipe.
Absolutely.
I'd say. So absolutely. Going off the springboarding from the alignment bits that you were talking about there, Nicki. I think it's time to talk about the ownership effect. What do you think?
Absolutely. I'm excited.
Brilliant. But yeah, as Nicki's explained, alignment is absolutely crucial on your team when setting up your early team. And it's really important to lead by example in your co-founder partnership. So yeah, there are so many different ways that you would, as partners, and your early team can be aligned in terms of vision and efforts. And one of these ways is by unlocking the power of the ownership effect. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this concept. Might be a lot of you. But the ownership effect describes how when an employee owns just a fraction of equity in a business, be this through shares or share options, their entire relationship with the business changes. So this is because when a member of your team is also a shareholder, or in some cases a share option holder, they're more likely to go the extra mile, be this with their own individual work or supporting the wider team outside of, say, their usual remit. So going back to that, mission alignment train of thought. And to put it simply, that's because if they're a shareholder or share option holder in your business, then they are personally vested in the success of the business. Your business's success becomes their success, because they ultimately can have a financial reward, whether this is upon the sale of the business, if an exit is in your plan, or through payments of dividends, if they are a shareholder.
I think to your point there, Amber, that doesn't it even more importantly showcases the work on the alignment piece, because also on the flip side, if you recruit a team that perhaps aren't or before you even get a team, if you feel like the mission isn't clear and everything isn't aligned, then you're giving away shares in the business to ultimately people that perhaps aren't fully on board for the long term or aren't really clear on what they're joining, because as partners you're not fully aligned and clear.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, deviating away from that slightly is a lot of people do choose to, if they are setting up any kind of share scheme or share option scheme with their team, they're likely to introduce a kind of cliff period as in place of like a probation period. So say if that person who is on course to become a shareholder in the business, the fit isn't quite right for them, there is some time before there are those options or those shares are theirs. So sometimes it'll be 6 months, a year, couple years. So it's also not an immediate thing.
Absolutely makes sense.
But yes, the ownership effect is the term that was coined in 2017 to describe the positive effects of team members having an equity stake in a business. And this ownership effect is so powerful that the UK government has had specific policies in place over the past, I want to say, 5 or maybe even 10 years to incentivize businesses to set up share schemes, as the positive effects on business are marked. And of course, in the eyes of the government, this translates to wider economic growth. And so, yeah, within your own business, giving your team some of an equity stake can not only help with attracting the best talent to your team, but again, as we've said, with loyalty and retention, as your team are personally invested in the long-term goals of the business. And then in turn, that plays into the overall alignment within the business. So people being more keen to help each other, as well as driving forwards with the business's mission, not only for the business's sake, but also for their individual sake, which is it shouldn't be understated how powerful that can be.
Absolutely. And I think as well, it goes back to that point, doesn't it, that it's a broader, as co-founder, it's a broader team mindset. And what I see is that shift of going from knowing actually your success now is dependent on the team. It's not just you. And if you do win, it's not just you that wins, it's the whole team that wins. So also acknowledging that, yes, of course, you would have got the business to a point where you're able to bring on a team, but going forward now, it's about bringing them along with you for the ride and actually having that longer term view and shifting that focus to, I believe in this team, I believe in this business, so now I need to make it ours, in the broader sense, not just me and my partners.
Yeah, 100%. And especially with your early team, so be that with the co-founders, if there are a few of you, or even with your key early hires, it can be a really truly transformative tool for your startup. But yes, and again, this can also have a market effect on the team's culture, your startup's culture, because when your team have an equity stake in your startup, it can boost the overall culture, as teams tend to be happier, more motivated, and more loyal to your organization. And allowing your team members to be shareholders is also a more democratic way of operating a business. So in turn, increasing equity inclusion, which is good for team culture and can also make your business look a lot better when going for things like B Corp status. If you can say that it's not just me and my co-founder who own shares in our startup, but we also expand that to the rest of the team as well. But yeah, at Vested, we've seen cases in businesses that we've worked with where when there is an exit event, some employees have been able to pay off their mortgages, travel the world like they've dreamt of for years, just from the payout of their shares. And what a gift that is to be able to share with your team. Dependent on the success of your business, if you're able to do that, again, it's so special. And that doesn't necessarily have to mean that person then, your team is not as it was. People don't have to leave, but it can be, absolutely transformative. But yes, when people own shares in the startup beyond just your co-founders, you and your co-founder, equity inclusion increases, and that means that the wealth of a business, dependent on its success, is can also contribute towards a fairer society and wider spread prosperity.
Absolutely, really important point, definitely.
Yeah, I'm glad you think so, Nikki. But yeah, so there are lots of reasons why you might want to set up a share scheme to harness the power of the ownership effects. But one concern that some co-founders have when considering setting up a share scheme is over other shareholders from your team taking control of your business, because a lot of founders and co-founders can be quite protective over the equity in their business, saying, "This is my baby, me and my co-founder have grown this together, and this is ours." Especially when there can be voting rights included with shares. But personally, from what we see typically at Vested, it's not something that you need to be hugely worried about, as often you can choose what rights your minority shareholders have for starts, and often the type of shares that employees carry as part of share schemes carry limited voting rights, and will only comprise a small fraction of the business's overall ownership structure. So although it is a very valid concern, there are lots of ways to mitigate against whatever it is that you're worrying about there.
And that's really important, because I feel like what I took from that was is co-founders or founders just asking questions about this. So I think there is almost, to your point, a perception of, oh, what does that mean? Or, oh, I don't want to give away shares, or people just don't. Whether they just think, oh, that's interesting. What do I need to ask to feel like I understand that fully? I think, as you say, it can be, totally bespoke, unique to the business. There's so many factors here to play with that make this right for you and your business and your partnership, that I think people just need to ask more questions about it.
Yeah, exactly. And so often, some people who are starting up a business may have had experience with share schemes in the past, but for a lot of people, the thought of owning part of a business when you're not one of the super higher ups, it can be an alien concept. It's only really come into the mainstream of in the UK, at least, over the past 5 to 10 years, being spurred by the tech industry, and I'd say probably somewhat largely inspired by our friends across the pond, along the west coast of the US. But yes, it is a philosophy which can span into any industry. So although a lot of the heritage of share schemes has been in the your typical Silicon Valley fast-growing tech startups, We see it all across different industries in the UK. You know, I speak to lots of people in AI businesses, tech startups, but also people who are doing clothing as part of the circular economy. People who are, you know, in the consumables industry. So, you know, your bakeries, your delis. It goes beyond just smaller, just you know, that narrower scope of the tech industry and much wider there.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, in short, to recap that, you can boost your team's culture in the long run through harnessing the ownership effect by sharing ownership with your team beyond just you as co-founders. So when the time's right for you to build up your team and bring new people into your startup, it can be a good idea to set up a share scheme, boost overall team alignment, productivity, retention, and culture. So yeah, really, really key things that you'll want to have at the front of your mind when you are building out your team.
Absolutely makes sense. And I think that obviously well planned must connect really well to the next theme we wanted to discuss, because as you say, shareholder schemes aren't just about, there's also quite an emotive side to it as well, right? It's kind of saying we're part of the same team here, and those points you got up there in terms of alignment, productivity, culture, really are things that in some ways can be harder to measure but have a real impact in terms of a team's success and connectedness and long-term
yeah, I think so.
Say togetherness, but long-term team
spirit, enjoyment at work, feeling connected to those around you. I think absolutely.
And I think on that same note, people, whilst there's the practical side here to consider, which Amber just explained so well there, and the emotive side that we just briefly explored, I think there's a point to be made here that people are far more emotionally aware than we give them credit for. And I've worked with a lot of co-founders who I see attempting to mask their true dynamic from their team and from themselves sometimes as well. But it's the point, even if it's not voiced, that there is potential, not even tension, but misalignment or lack of positive energy between partners. It is felt by the team. And in a startup especially, that energy makes all the difference to the outcomes. And that comes back to, again, the idea that your values and ethos and the idea of being really aligned to all feed into affect, we try to translate that to your team that you want to build is highly important. And that goes back to the idea around that it's not just about looking for the right people, it's about saying, are we the right partners to attract the people that we're looking for? How are we, how is our dynamic affecting the team we either have already or we're building or trying to bring into the business? And there's loads of work to do here around company culture, and I know some amazing culture experts and organizational strategists that kind of help design teams. If anyone wants introduction, let me know, because I think it's really important work to do. But I feel like understanding that your partnership impacts a team, because also being a founder and a leader are different skill sets.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people, to your point, say like, oh, this is my business, it's my baby. No one knows it like me. No one can lead it like I do. Yes, of course, your skill in that business is crucial, and that mission and passion experience is everything. But that does not mean you are the right person to lead necessarily a team in this business. And again, those conversations can be difficult, but understanding as co-founders who you will be as leaders and how you get there is important to have. And I definitely work with some clients who actually, between them, they say, look, actually, I'm not a leader. That's not my skill set. My real contribution and genius in this business is X. I don't know whether it's the tech side of it or whether it's the sale, whatever. That's my skill set. And actually, sorry, Amber, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, like we were talking about last week with going through those was it 5 questions to ask your co-founder, or quite a few more you'd put together, Nicki? But so making sure that you're both attuned to what the other's strengths are, where your areas of responsibility are going to be, where you think you can take the lead, and where in other places you might want to take a step back and let your co-founders shine. Going back to that balance of the team there and clearness of communication.
Definitely that broader awareness, and as you said, like vulnerability and ability to say, look, this is where I'm strong, this is where I'm weak at. How do we make sure that as a team there's leadership here, especially as with startups, people often join them to learn, right? They want the experience of being in a startup, of seeing what it's like to be in that early stage, and it's not always an easy ride for someone joining a team in that situation. So how can you be the leaders that will attract, nurture, and keep the right people that you're looking for is a different skill set to learn. But I see a lot
100%
goes missed. And then as part of that conversation, as we just said, but thinking about what's the individual work here I need to do on myself. Who do I want to be as a leader? What leader does this business need in this moment? And ask those hard questions and work with a coach or a mentor or whatever it might be, a nerd, whoever, to think, okay, this needs to be an objective conversation about the leadership needed in this business. Who is best to do that? Because it might not be me, or it could be a bit of me and a bit of someone else, and having a really clear and honest conversation to make sure that you're really aligned on what it is. Because getting the team in is one thing, but then being the leaders that will keep that team is again something different to do. So being aware that your day-to-day partnership not only impacts the initial team that you find, but day-to-day impacts everything that business feels. And if they feel like as a team you are aligned and strong and are better together, then that energy is so infectious to the rest of the people in your business and has beyond measurable impact in terms of their contribution, their passion, their productivity, and they'll be the ones that will go out and champion the business and your partnership to others, to bring in other talent and to connect you to other clients, whoever. So it does have so many ripple effects.
I think especially in startup world where a lot of these businesses are very small. Sometimes it might be the two co-founders and then maybe one other, or maybe 3 others, 5 others. That relationship there, I think, can be so easily detected when things are going great and perhaps when things are not so great. So going back to that emotional awareness you were speaking about earlier, I think that definitely rings true in this context for sure.
Definitely. And on that note, with the resource that you kindly mentioned there, again, it's about saying, what's the work like long term here? And this isn't just a tick box exercise of saying, okay, great, we're aligned now, we can leave that for another 5 years. How are you setting up processes and structures that mean you are continually nurturing and protecting your partnership? Because now in this situation, you owe it to your team as well. It's not just you owe it to your team. So things like my 7 questions guide, a good reminder of ways to touch base and make sure that you're having conversations about the partnership, not just about the business day to day. So having that broader awareness of how you can continue to build and nurture a team that you want and that you deserve as well, making sure that it's all going towards that mission and why you started in the first place.
I love that guide. It's a brilliant resource, Nicki.
Thank you. But I think that was all of our key points to cover today, and I think it's been fantastic to run through those and connect up the dots and see how actually I feel like the ownership effect and what that means in practice is such a clear way to demonstrate everything that we touched on in terms of commitment and confidence as well in your partnership and the team you want to build, and making sure that actually I think you live those values. If you recruit a team that you're really passionate about, how can you demonstrate that to them and make sure that it all connects and really feeds the long-term success of your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Good for the business, good for the individual, good for society.
Win.
Yeah, triple win. Oh, well,
absolutely.
Thank you, Nicki. I think this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed our chat this week, and hearing your insights as well on co-founders building out their team and the important conversations to have there. But next week I'm even more excited for. So, where we'll be talking about co-founder relationships in the context of a fundraising round, and all of the things that you and your co-founders and early team will want to be considering ahead of going through a fundraise. So, looking forward to seeing lots of people there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Amber. It's been another fab conversation. And as I said, we'll share the resources to people that have engaged with the event and follow up. And yeah, look forward to speaking next week.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nicki. Catch you later.
See you later. Bye.
See you on Monday. Bye.
Bye.